we come to the 7th video of boxers' birthdays. And we come to Bunny Johnson. Bunny Johnson was the British Commonwealth heavyweight champion around the years 1974 to 75. Like I say, Germany winning the World Soccer Cup in Germany, beating Holland 2-1 in the final. 1975, you had Muhammad Ali fight Chuck Wepner on the 24th of March of that year, stopping him in the last few seconds of the 15th round. Sylvester Stallone in the audience watching. Got the idea for the Rocky film franchise. Bunny Johnson, that was all happening at the same time. Bunny Johnson was British and Commonwealth heavyweight champion, and he was British light heavyweight champion around 1971 to 81. He was kicking around that scene and beyond. Say 1971, you had the first Muhammad Ali v Joe Frazier fight of the trilogy, which was the first fight and only fight Muhammad Ali would lose, getting knocked down by Joe Frazier. Having a few comeback fights, then fighting Frazier, getting put down with a left hook to the jaw that swelled up his jaw. And that was March the 8th of that year, 1971. Going on that same time, Bunny Johnson became the British light heavyweight champion, and Bunny Johnson was born in Jamaica on May the 10th, 1947, and because Bunny Johnson was born on May the 10th in Jamaica in 1947, he is a Taurus birth sign, as Taurus birth sign goes from the 20th of April to May the 20th. And Bunny Johnson began his pro boxing career on February the 8th, 1968, same year as the Mexico Summer Olympics. And you had the France Winter Olympics in Grenoble that year. Then we go to Harold Johnson. Again, you had father and son. Both father and son fought Jersey Joe Walcott. Quite a rare sequence. Harold Johnson and his son. So, Harold Johnson was the world light heavyweight champion around the years 1961 and 63. Like I said, you had Ali just turning pro that year. You'd fight Tony Asperti on the 17th of January 1961. Stop him in the third round by TKO. He stopped him by TKO in the third round of that year, 1961. Like I say, 1963, you had that John F. Kennedy assassination on the 22nd of November, and then you also had the Lee Harvey Oswald on the 24th, and Jack Ruby, like I said, was involved in that. He got for the Lee Harvey Oswald shooting, but he knew Barney Ross quite well, apparently. Barney Ross was a great boxer. So boxing link there, and history link. And Harold Johnson was born in Manayunk, Pennsylvania on August the 9th, 1928, the same year as the Amsterdam Olympics, or the Amsterdam Summer Olympics. You had Johnny Wes Muller competing in the Amsterdam Olympics, the swimmer winning 2 golds in the swimming But he also won in Paris Summer Olympics in 1924. He won 3 golds in the swimming and 1 in the bronze. He won 1 in water polo, a bronze in water polo. So he basically had 5 golds out of them 2 Olympics and 1 bronze in 2 different sports. Johnny Wes Muller. He would star as Tarzan in the film. Johnny Wes Muller. But on that same day, 1928, was the same year that Harold Johnson was born. That same year also, you had the Switzerland's Winter Olympics, and because Harold Johnson was born in Manayunk, Pennsylvania on August the 9th, 1928, he is a Leo birth sign, as Leo birth sign goes from July the 23rd to August the 22nd. And Harold Johnson began his pro boxing career in 1946, a year after the World War II. And we come to Jack Johnson, who was the world heavyweight champion from 1908 to 1915, winning it of Tommy Burns and losing it to Jess Willard, winning it of Tommy Burns on 26th of December 1908 in Melbourne, Rushcutters Bay in Australia, chasing him around the world to get his shot. He was unfairly dismissed because of his colour, and then he lost it in the hot Toledo sun on July the 4th, 1915 to Jess Willard, the giant ex-farmhand, late start of the boxing. And Jack Johnson, first title was a middleweight title actually, when he first started in his first few fights, a Texas middleweight state title, believe it or not, and that's where he was born, in Galveston, Texas, on March the 31st, 1878. And at that time, the American bare knuckle champion would have been Joe Goss, recognised from 1776 to 1880, the American bare knuckle champion. And the English bare knuckle champion in that time would have been Harry Sellers, because he was recognised as champion from 1776 to 1779. The same year, he was born in 1978. So because Jack Johnson was born in Galveston, Texas, on March 31st, 1878, he is a Aries birth sign, as Aries birth sign goes from 21st of March to April 19th. We come to Colin Jones. So Colin Jones was the European and British and Commonwealth welterweight champion from 1980 onwards. Got beaten by Don Curry. Don Curry was really top of his game then. And Colin Jones beat Curtin Lang twice. And Colin Jones, 1980 would have been the year of the Moscow Olympics that the USA boycotted. The Moscow Summer Olympics were in Moscow. But weirdly enough, the 1980 Winter Olympics were in USA, Lake Placid, that same year. So I imagine they both boycotted each. I know the USA boycotted the Moscow Summer Olympics. And Colin Jones was born in Gorsinon, Wales on March the 21st, 1959. And because Colin Jones was born in Wales on the 21st of March 1959, he is just in the Aries birth sign area, as it actually starts Aries on March the 21st to April the 19th. And Colin Jones began his pro boxing career in 1977, on October the 3rd, 1977. That'd be a year after the Montreal Summer Olympics and a year after the 1976 Winter Olympics in Austria, Innsbruck, Austria. So we come to Percy Jones. Percy Jones was the world, European and British flyweight champion, and from the years 1914 onwards, that was the beginning of the First World War, 1914, so it's probably interrupted a little bit. And Percy Jones was born in Porth, Wales on Boxing Day, December the 26th, 1892. That would have been the same year that John L. Sullivan took that bare knuckle title off Paddy Ryan. And Boxing Day is synonymous with the great Jack Johnson winning the heavyweight title in 1908 in Rushcutters Bay, Melbourne, Australia. And because Percy Jones was born in Porth, Wales in December the 26th, 1892. He is a Capricorn birth sign, as Capricorn birth sign goes from December the 22nd to January the 19th. And Percy Jones started his pro boxing career in 1911. That would have been a year after the Jack Johnson v James J. Jeffries match in Reno, Nevada. That was 1910 on July the 4th. So we go to William Gorilla Jones. He went up the weight to cruiser. This is a 1980, I'm reading from here, 1980 book. So, no, a different one actually. That's a different guy. Sorry, it's never Guillermo Jones I'm thinking of. This is William Gorilla Jones. So again, a friend with Mae West, the famous actor of them days. William Gorilla Jones was the world middleweight champion 1932, 1937. Like I said, 1937 was the starting of the Sino-Japanese War with China. That was 1937, 1945, run in line with the Second World War, or just before it started. But 1932 was the first Los Angeles Olympics in California, Los Angeles, California. The second was in 1984. And so that was all going on when William Gorilla Jones was the champion. And William Gorilla Jones was born in Memphis, Tennessee on May the 4th, 1910. Again, Memphis, Tennessee was the host to the Scott Welsh, Henry Akinwande fight. In 1997, January the 11th, 1997, I think, top of my head. And because William Gorilla Jones was born in Memphis, Tennessee on May the 4th, is a Taurus birth sign, as Taurus birth sign goes from April the 20th to May the 20th. And William Gwiller Jones began his pro boxing career in 1928, the same year as the Amsterdam Olympics. Like I said, you had Johnny Wes Muller, the Tarzan actor, later become Tarzan actor in the old films. Johnny Wes Muller won 2 lots of golds in the swimming in Amsterdam in 1928. But again, like I said, the Paris Olympics in 1924, he won 3 golds in the swimming and 1 bronze in the water polo. So it would be 5 golds and 1 bronze medal from 2 different Olympics and competing in 2 different sports. And that was the same year as William Gwiller Jones began his pro boxing career on January 27th, 1928. It was a hard swinging southpaw. Then Ben Jordan we come to. So Ben Jordan was the world British featherweight champion from 1897 to 1899. Like I said, John L. Sullivan would have been recognised as the champion then, heavyweight. That's coming out that bare knuckle era into the Marcus Queensberry era. He got beaten by Corbett there, but that was later on. So that was all happening around that time. And Ben Jones was born in Bermondsey, London on April the 1st, 1873. You'd have had Tommy Allen. He was regarded as the American champion from 1873 to 1876, bare knuckle days. And you'd have had Peter Cochrane, regarded as the English bare knuckle champion. From 1771 he was to 1776. And because Ben Jordan was born on April the 1st, 1873, he would be an Aries birth sign, as Aries birth sign goes from March the 21st to April the 19th. And Ben Jordan began his pro boxing career in 1892. That was the same, that was around when John L. Sullivan got beat, I'm sure, by Corbett in that glove match. I'm sure it was, yes. So we go to Don Jordan. He was meant to be an ex-hitman in his he was actually, so he was born in Los Angeles, but I swear he lived in Dominican Republic. Not too sure. There's stories about him being a hitman to survive. I don't know how true that is, but in a book called This Corner, I swear I remember that. So it was Don Jordan. So Don Jordan was the world welterweight champion around 1958 to 1960. Like I say, 1958 was the year that Brazil won the World Soccer Cup in Sweden, beating Sweden 5-2, thrashing them in the final. 1960 was the year that Muhammad Ali competed in the Rome Olympics, won light heavyweight gold. And Don Jordan was born in Los Angeles on June the 22nd, 1934. 1934 was the year when Italy won the World Soccer Cup in Italy, beating Czechoslovakia 2-1 in the final. And because Don Jordan was born on June 22nd, 1934, he is just in their Cancer birth sign area, as Cancer birth sign goes from June the 21st to July the 22nd. And Don Jordan began his pro boxing career in 1953, a year after the Helsinki Olympics, with Paavo Nurmi, the Finnish runner, and Emil Zatapak, the Czechoslovakian runner. And you had the Norway, that was the Summer Olympics. You had the Norway Winter Olympics in Oslo. And you had the Helsinki Olympics, Summer Olympics in Finland. Say that was a year, but this was a year after, 1953, April the 27th, 1953, Don Jordan turned pro. Then you add Ayub Kaluli. Ayub Kaluli, world light middleweight champion, WBA, 1979 onwards. That was the same year that the cruiserweight division was created, and Ayub Kalili was the British Commonwealth middleweight champion, 1978. That was the same year that Argentina won the World Soccer Cup, beating Holland in their own country, 3-1 in the final. A second year on a trot, Holland would get beat. And Ayub Kaluli was born in Kampala, Uganda on January the 6th, 1954. In 1954 was the same year that Germany won the World Soccer Cup in Switzerland. The only time that's ever been hosted in Switzerland. And Germany beat Hungary 3-2 in the final to win that in 1954, the same year that Ayub Kaluli was born. And because Ayub Kaluli was born in Kampala, Uganda, on January the 6th, 1954, he is a Capricorn birth sign, as Capricorn birth sign goes from the 22nd of December to January the 19th. And Ayub Kaluli began his pro boxing career in 1976, same year as the Montreal Olympics, where Sugar Ray Leonard won gold, beating El Dama, the Cuban, in the final. That was in the Summer Olympics. And you had the second Austria Winter Olympics, also in Innsbruck, in that same year, 1979. Same year, Ayub Kaluli turned pro in the boxing. Then we come to cracking fighter Peter Kane, was the world flyweight champion, 1938 to 1943. Let's say 1938 was that year when Italy won the World Soccer Cup in France, beating Hungary 4-2 in the final. First time a non-home country won it. Out of 3 so far World Soccer Cups. And so that was around that same time as Peter Kane was world flyweight champion 1938, 1943. He was the European Bantam champion 1947, 1948. Obviously 1948 we had the Olympics in London. That was 1948. That was the first Olympics after the war. Finished in 1945, the Second World War. And that all happened at the same time as Peter Kane was the world bantamweight champion 1947, 1948. That was happening around the same time. And Peter Kane was born in Goulburn, England on February the 28th, 1918, the end of the First World War. And because Peter Kane was born in Goulburn, England on February the 28th, 1918, he has a Pisces birth sign. His Pisces birth sign goes from February the 19th to March the 20th. And Peter Kane began his pro boxing career on December the 13th, 1934, the same year that Italy won the World Soccer Cup in Italy, beating Czechoslovakia 2-1 in the final. That was on... Yes, so he began his pro boxing career December 13th, 1934. So we go to Rocky Kansas, a well underrated fighter. So, Rocky Kansas was the world lightweight champion from 1925 to 26. Like I say, 1926 was the year Harry Greb died. And Rocky Kansas was born in Buffalo, New York on April the 21st, 1895. And because Rocky Kansas was born in New York, Buffalo, New York, on April the 21st, 1895, he is just in the Taurus birth sign area, because Taurus birth sign starts from April the 20th to May the 20th. And Rocky Kansas began his pro boxing career in 1911. And we go to Louis Kid Kaplan, one of the first I heard of Russian fighters winning titles. Might be the first, not sure, but I think he is as far as I can think back. So, Louis Kid Kaplan was the world featherweight champion from 1925, 1927. You had that last Tunney Dempsey fight, the Battle of Long Count in 1927, and 1925, that was a year after the Paris Olympics, Summer Olympics, and a year after the first Winter Olympics in France, in Chamonix. That was all happening around that time, that Rocky Kansas was the world lightweight champion. And Rocky Kansas, is a Taurus birth sign, only just in. So he began his pro boxing career in 1911. So Louis Kid Kaplan, back to Louis Kid Kaplan, yes. So I've gone from one to the other. Start off again. Louis Kid Kaplan was the world featherweight champion, 1925 to 1927. He was born in Russia in 1902. No date, so I'm not going to do that. So he began his pro boxing career in 1921, the year that the junior lightweight division was created. And we come to Peter Keenan, who was the European, British and Commonwealth bantamweight champion, ranging around the years 1951 to 1959. 1951 was that year Willie Pett fought Sandy Sadler. I think that was because there was a few fights they had. One was the dirtiest fight ever, and it was a fight that Bruce Lee used to keep on VHS and watch over and over, or fight reel, whatever it was then. He used to keep and watch because he believed it was a classic example of dirty boxing for self-defence. They both got slung out, never banned from the state. 1951, you also had Joe Louis get beaten, I think it was by Marciano or Ezra Charles that year, quite badly to finish his career. A lot went on that 1951 year. You had Randy Turpin win the title of Sugar Ray Robinson, the middleweight title, in England on July the 10th, and lose it less than 2 months later in America. But cut in Sugar Ray Robinson in the second match. But Robinson was told the fight might be stopped on a cut and come out and finished to get his revenge over Turpin. That was less than 2 months after the July the 10th shock result. He also fought on February the 15th of 1951 in the last of the six-fight sequence with Jake LaMotta, finally stopping Jake LaMotta. But winning 5-1 out of 6 matches. And I think Sandy Sadler fought in Cuba somewhere. There was so against Solis. But let's go back to Peter Keenan. He was kicking around that scene, 1951 to 1959, European, British and Commonwealth bantam champions around that era. And Peter Keenan was born in Anderston, Glasgow on August the 8th, 1928. Like I said, that was the year of the Amsterdam Olympics. You had Johnny Wes Muller win 2 lots of golds in the swimming to add to his collection, making it 5 golds and 1 bronze in 2 different sports, because in Paris 1924, the Summer Olympics, he won 3 lots of golds in the swimming and 1 bronze in the water polo. And that was happening at the same time that Peter Keenan was born. 1928, you also had the Switzerland Winter Olympics. It's only second so far Winter Olympics. The first one was in 1924 in France. But this second one in Switzerland, the Winter Olympics, was in St. Moritz in Switzerland. And because Peter Keenan was born on August the 8th, 1928, he is a Leo birth sign, as Leo birth sign goes from July the 23rd to August the 22nd. So we're going to leave it there. That's the 7th bang.